The future now firmly in our hands. Raise your voices high and sing on your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong. Feel our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum for Caricom. Hele, hele, bravo. Open your sting, Caricom. Leve, leve, bravo. Naki your drum, Caricom. Tabo, ya tabo, bravo. Open your sting, Caricom. Leve, leve, bravo. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong. Feel our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum. Oh, Caricom, hele, hele, bravo. Open your sting, Caricom. Leve, leve, bravo. Hele, hele. Tabo, ya tabo, awo. Naki your drum, Caricom. Leve, leve, bravo. From many distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure, some bound in chains. Through battles waged and fought, through victory and pain, by test of their courage, our freedom was gained. In homage to those gone before us, the heroes of lands in the sun, we vow to join hands and to focus on building one Caribbean. Raise your voices high, sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong. Feel our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum. For Caricom, though great and diverse be our ethnicities, the bonds that unite us are stronger than these. We dine, we pray, we love, we dance and we play. We relate to each other, resting Yahweh. Today, as a people united, determined and steadfast we stand. We look to a brand new horizon, the future now firmly in our hands. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong. Feel our hearts beating. Raise your voices high and sing of your courage, your pride. Sing it loud and strong. Feel our hearts beat as one. Celebrating song as we rush to heights where we belong. Sound of victory roll. Oh, Caricom, hele, hele, bravo. Oh, for your sting, Caricom. Leve, leve, wow. Tabu, ya tabu, awo. Knock your drum, Caricom. Leve, leve, wow. From many distant lands.
Good morning to all of you joining us on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube for this important launch event as we launch the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force this morning. I'm Jennifer Britton, Deputy Program Manager, ICT for Development, and I serve as one of the Caricom Secretariat focal points on digital skills, and I'm delighted to be your chairperson for this short launch ceremony today. Please join with me as I recognize the presence of the Honorable Prime Minister of Grenada, Dr. Keith Mitchell, Caricom Ministers of Governments, the Secretary General of Caricom, Dr. Carla Barnett, Assistant Secretaries General of Caricom, Permanent Secretaries and other government officials, heads and representatives of regional and international institutions and organizations and universities, the co-chairs of the Digital Skills Task Force, Dr. Barbara Reynolds and Mr. Carlton Samuels, and members of the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force. Participants in this opening ceremony, private sector stakeholders and partners, Caricom Secretariat team, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today is a good day for the Caribbean community as we launch the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force. As many of us are aware, breathtaking developments in new digital technologies are reshaping economies and nations. Examples of these are 5G, wireless communications, smartphones, mobile computing, cloud technologies, big data, and artificial intelligence. Recent developments propelled by COVID-19 have highlighted the pressing need for the digital transformation of economies. The acceleration of technology adoption in the workplace and in communities has widened the skills gap and digital divide and will radically transform the organization of economies and how people live. Digital transformation has emerged as a profound global trend that offers challenges and opportunities, and which, if accompanied by effective policies, can contribute to overcoming development challenges. While Caricom is making significant strides in digital transformation, mainly under the umbrella of Caricom Single ICT Space, there is a persistent and wide skills gap. There are other challenges as we work on digital transformation, but for this morning, we will focus on the ones related to skills. The fourth industrial revolution is also reshaping the demand for skills. And for Caricom to truly benefit from continued technological innovation, we must prepare and equip members of the society, the entire populace, with skills to remain relevant and nimble amidst significant challenges. The region has also made significant progress in basic education, but several challenges also remain, and these include too few youth with access to high quality and market relevant skills development programs, insufficient labor market and employability, inadequate financing, and weak governance and quality assurance systems. The digital environment is changing so fast that formal education can't keep up. Today, more than ever before, Caricom governments have the power to adopt, adapt, and implement the right solutions to grapple with the challenges mentioned before. The Digital Skills Task Force is one such solution as mandated by the Council on Human and Social Development in November 2020. On the face of it, digital skills brings the education and digital sectors together. However, an all-encompassing, dynamic, and collaborative solution will of necessity bring together governments, international agencies, private sector workers, and civil society. We wanted to bring some of those voices into the space today as we launch the Digital Skills Task Force. And so some of those will be in our short ceremony today. To begin our short ceremony and deliver the opening remarks, it gives me great pleasure, therefore, to introduce the 8th and current Secretary General of Caricom, Dr. Carla Barnett, who is an economist who has worked across the length and breadth of the Caribbean and perhaps by now is no stranger to any of us. Among the series of her first, Dr. Barnett is the first female and first national of Belize to hold the post of Caricom Secretary General. Dr. Barnett assumed duties as Caricom and Cariforum Secretary General and head of the Caricom Secretariat on August 15th. So today is exactly 1 month to that date. In her first address to the region, Dr. Barnett committed that she was here to work. And I can assure you that as we do today, we at the Secretariat have held her to that promise every day for the past months. Her vision is of a Caribbean where the average citizen of the region feels a part of and not apart from. A community where all citizens want to contribute to building the sense of one Caribbean people with one common experience and destiny. Dr. Barnett has also highlighted youth development and digital transformation amongst some of her priorities. As we seek to unite today around the issue of advancement for all Caricom people, it is my distinct pleasure and honor to invite Dr. Barnett to deliver the opening remarks for this launch ceremony. Dr. Barnett. Secretary General, you may need to unmute your mic. Remember,
there you go. There I am. All right. Okay. Thanks very much, Jennifer Britton, and thanks for the warm introduction. It is my pleasure to be here today, and you're right. You all in the Secretariat have been working very hard along with me over the last 4 weeks that I've been here. Dr. the Honorable Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada and lead head of government responsible for science and technology, which includes, of course, ICT. Honorable ministers, heads and representatives of regional institutions and organizations, co-chairs of the Caricom Digital Task Force, Digital Skills Task Force, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen, all, good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force. This task force has been established to provide an opportunity for the region to deliver a more collaborative, coordinated, and innovative approach to meeting the digital skills challenge. Technology is quickly transforming the way we live and the way we work. Most transactions are digital and information is immediate. As you may be aware, the need for digital skills has come to the forefront due to the disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic. The regional digital footprint has increased tremendously over the past year, with citizens doing what they can to adapt to the new normal way of living. However, COVID-19 has also deepened the existing inequality of access and further exacerbated the mismatch between income and education, training, and job prospects. The crisis revealed the weakness and unpreparedness of the current education systems worldwide, following the deployment of digital learning during mass school closures across almost all countries. At the Global Education Meeting convened by UNESCO in October of 2020, governments and the international community identified 5 priorities for urgent action. And these included support to teachers as frontline workers, scaling up of digital skills, and narrowing the digital divide. Before the pandemic, digital skills were valued, but now they are vital to keep up with the growing trend of the virtual world in which we live and must thrive. Strong collaboration is needed between the public, private, and civic society sectors to promote learning and skills delivery in different environments and make it accessible and inclusive to all. The private sector is well positioned to help meet and expand this increasingly urgent and unmet need and demand. At the government level, this will also mean developing comprehensive education, social welfare, and economic policies. Addressing digital inclusion and proliferating digital skills across Caricom in a comprehensive, strategic manner will add another important layer to being a community for all, as it will help to ensure that all Caricom citizens have the necessary skills and can participate meaningfully in society. Digital skills for Caricom citizens were already envisioned as we crafted the Caricom Single ICT Space in 2014, and in 2017, the Human Resource Development Strategy for 2030. Those skills are identified as key inputs to achieving the Sustainable Development Goal SDG 4, which aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The need to close the digital skills gap is now urgent. While the full effect and numbers gap in Caricom are not yet known, I am happy to share that the Caricom Secretariat will embark in 2022 on an ICT sector gap analysis across the whole of Caricom with funding under the 11th EDF. This gap analysis will support the recovery efforts of the region through the identification and quantification of critical parts of our digital infrastructure and help to fast-track digital transformation. The primary objective of the Caricom Digital Task Force is to promote awareness of the importance of digital skills for students, business, and governments. It is also to provide technical guidance on the development of digital skills and capability levels across Caricom.
Recording in progress.
The work of the task force will therefore be complementary to many other important regional actions. I express sincere thanks to the co-chair and all members of this task force who have volunteered their valuable time and accepted to be a part of this important and much needed initiative. Your work will contribute significantly to the education, human resource development, and digital transformation efforts of the Caribbean community, and ultimately provide many individuals, especially our young people, with greater opportunities towards providing a better quality of life. I encourage all of you listening and participating today, Caricom citizens in the region and in the diaspora, and key stakeholders, please keep interested and engaged in the work of the task force, which holds its inaugural meeting today. Share your expertise, contribute wherever necessary and however possible. Once again, welcome to this launch ceremony, and I look forward to the outcome of the efforts of this task force. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General of Caricom, Dr. Barnett. And we thank you for your strong opening to this ceremony. And giving us many of the touch points which the task force will need to look at: the skills mismatch, job prospects, digital inclusion, the need to close that skills gap, the objectives of the task force, and all underpinned by working on a Caricom for all. Thank you, Secretary General. I'm not sure if you can stay with us longer. I know you have another meeting, but we will move on to the next part of our launch, which gives us some perspectives as we listen to some international and regional perspectives on digital skills. Our first two presenters will be Dr. Susan Telcher, who is the head of capacity and digital skills development, that division at ITU. And in this context, she's responsible for ensuring the delivery of capacity development products and services in the field of digital technologies, with the objective to enhance knowledge and skills for digital transformation, in particular in developing countries. So I think we have the right person from the ITU sharing some thoughts with us this morning, and she is connecting from Geneva, Switzerland. And I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Telcher, so that perhaps the Secretary General can hear some of your thoughts before she leaves the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Honorable Prime Minister, Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon, everyone from headquarters, ITU headquarters here in Geneva. It's my great pleasure to be part of this launch event of the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force, and let me congratulate Caricom for taking this important step forward towards strengthening digital skills in the region. At the start of the event, I would like to put the topic of digital skills in the broader context of development, in particular in light of the past year and the pandemic, and complementing what the Secretary General also raised in a few of her remarks. Next slide, please. So let's look at COVID-19. If there is one aspect that clearly came out during the pandemic, it's the importance of good internet connectivity and the fact that many people don't have it and were put at a disadvantage because so many activities were moved online. A few facts: according to UNESCO, 90% of schools were closed at some point during the pandemic, with 1.5 billion students affected or out of school. And those with remote learning capabilities had a huge advantage over those who didn't have that. ITU and UNICEF estimate that 2/3 of school children worldwide do not have internet access at home. Second, according to ILO, around 93% of the global workforce were affected by workplace closures. Again, those who had the privilege to do jobs that can be done remotely, and those who had the connectivity and capacity to do that were greatly favored. Now, in the future, we expect that some of the new ways of working and learning enabled by the use of technologies will continue. But according to ITU data, still 48% of the world population is offline. And we require reliable and affordable internet connection and digital skills to do this. So even when broadband connectivity is available, people are not yet using the internet, and we have to look into the why. I want to show you some data on that. If we can move to the next slide, because we have been looking at this gap, internet user gap, between people who are using the internet and people who live in an area that is covered by broadband connectivity. And you can see on that slide this gap, because globally around 90% of the world population now live in an area that has broadband service coverage, but only 52% are actually using the internet. So this is based on the latest ITU data. And if we look at this more closely, next slide, please. We can see that this internet user gap is the largest in the least developed countries. If we can, yeah. So you can see here on the right-hand side, you can see that in the least developed countries, less than 20% of people are using the internet. This is the red bar. And this compares to about 75% of people who actually live somewhere where they have broadband connectivity. So we have to understand this gap. Next slide, please. I have looked specifically at Caricom data. This is ITU data to see how the gap looks like in this region. And I've put two data sets here, one that includes Haiti, which is the one on the left, and one that excludes Haiti, which is the one on the right. This is because Haiti has much lower values when it comes to mobile population coverage and internet users. And yet it has a large population, and therefore it impacts the regional averages a lot. So you see here, there's also in this region, you have this gap between people actually using the internet and those who live somewhere where they have broadband mobile connectivity. So again, the question arises, what are the main reasons for why people are not connecting? Next slide, please. And indeed, now we are getting to the topic of skills and education, because if you ask people who are not using the internet, and these are figures from developing countries, of why they are not online, a lot of the answers relate to, I don't know what the internet is, I don't know how to use it, I don't find it useful, etc., etc. So all of this can be linked to digital skills and education, which indeed is one of the key barriers to internet adoption in developing countries. So in this sense, the current crisis is also an opportunity because people are starting to value connectivity much more for work, for education, for entertainment, for social life, etc. Next slide, please. So COVID-19 also clearly brought about the existing and even the growing digital skills gap, because the pandemic prompted a boom in the supply and use of digital tools, platforms, products, services, but that in turn required workers and citizens to develop their skills in the use of digital technologies. But in developing countries, right now, about 65% of the population actually lack skills to use the internet. And at the same time, there is a very strong growth of employment in ICT-related industries. Even during the pandemic, this industry experienced the highest growth. Yet we have a huge skills gap. I was trying to see for the skills gap in the Caribbean region. There's not a lot of data available. However, a recent survey by PricewaterhouseCoopers found that 40% of executives in the region think their organizations are behind in training workers with digital skills. I also checked on the official statistics that we have in ITU and digital skills. There's not a lot available for countries here, but for example, in Jamaica, the people reported that around 50% of individuals have basic skills, 66% intermediate skills, and none actually reported to having advanced skills or online safety skills. And finally, if we look at households that have computers at home, this is also very important because if you want to foster and strengthen digital skills, training and online learning, and you have no computers at home, this is also a challenge. And in this region, we have between 11 and 38% in countries where data are available of households with computers. So next slide, please. Digital skills gaps exist at all levels. On this slide, this is based on our digital skills toolkit. We have classified digital skills, if you could move to the next slide, please, into 3 categories: basic, intermediate, and advanced skills. And indeed, the gaps exist at all levels. So in the work that you are going to address in your digital skills task force, you will also need to look at the different types of digital skills and how to address them best, and look at the whole range of the spectrum. Next one. So before closing, let me make 4 concluding remarks on this topic. First of all, if we look at the post-pandemic scenario, we can be sure that the acceleration of the digital transition will continue, and with it also the demand for a digitally skilled population and workforce. Also, we can definitely link digital inclusion to both digital access and digital skills. So policies that address digital inclusion also need to be addressing these 2 policy aspects in combination. This is very important. Finally, digital skills strategies and policies, they need to be based on solid methodological approaches. It's very important to do thorough assessments and systematic analysis. This will require data collection, stock taking, etc. I was very happy to hear that Caricom is actually embarking on a gap analysis next year. And these kind of findings will be very important to feed into the future work of the task force. Finally, digital skills frameworks. There's quite a few frameworks out there. It's important to develop those frameworks as part of the digital transformation strategy. And next slide, please. In ITU, we have a couple of tools we can offer to you also in this process. Our digital skills toolkit is specifically designed for policymakers who are embarking on developing digital skills strategies. And our digital skills assessment guidebook, which came out last year, helps policymakers to carry out assessments to identify gaps, to identify the demand and supply when it comes to digital skills, and how to predict for the future. Next slide, please. Finally, campaign is part of the global initiative on decent jobs for youth by the ILO. And the aim of the campaign is precisely to address the skills gap by encouraging partners to make commitments to invest in digital skills development for young people. The aim is to equip 25 million young people with job-ready digital skills by 2025. With this, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Telser. And we thank you for pointing us to some of the alarming figures in developing countries, also for highlighting the connectivity challenge, the internet user gap, and the gap that exists itself in Caricom, and that all of these are related to education and skills. Thank you also for highlighting, as the Secretary General did, the need for digital inclusion and to be able to address it very strategically. And we thank you as well for the offer from the ITU to support us with your tools and in going forward with the Digital Skills Task Force. It is my pleasure now to introduce the ILO representative, because the ILO and the ITU have the lead for as in international organizations in dealing with digital skills, and also have specific charges with regard to global connectivity and looking at the global workforce as we go further and further into this century. Karen Soningo has recently joined the International Labour Organization Skills Branch as a skills digitalization specialist to support ILO constituents in the digitalization of their national TVET and skills systems. Before joining the ILO, Karine Soningo had extensive international experience in the private sector as a learning and development specialist. And we did recruit her quite recently, and we thank her for her willingness to support us in this launch. She is joining us today from France. So over to you, Karine. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your warm introduction, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased and honored to contribute today to the launch of the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force. And thank you very much, Susan, for setting the scene with such valuable insights. So on my end, I am going to focus more specifically on how the technical and vocational education and training sector can play a critical role in the development of digital skills, and what does this require more specifically. So looking at the key drivers of change, if you'd like to move to the next slide, please, in the new world of work, we certainly can mention demographics and climate change, but of course, and today we will focus on how technologies among those mega drivers of change have an impact on jobs and occupations, on production and delivery of goods and services, and we can mention here EL for e-finance, on human resources practices, whether that be recruitment, mobility, or strategic workforce planning, on workplace settings, which have evolved quite dramatically during the pandemic period. And last but not least, tremendous impacts of technologies and digitalization in the way we teach and learn. And this requires definitely a new set of skills, and we are focusing here on digital skills specifically, but also requires the definition, if I can put it like that, of new roles, the adoption of new attitudes, as well as endorsing new types of responsibilities when it comes to the world of work and the way we teach and learn. And here the TVET sector has a critical role to play in, as Susan mentioned, bridging the digital skills divide and the digital skills gap. Next slide, please. If we now look at the TVET sector specific digital transition, we can say that within the 2 to 3 past years, the TVET sector had to undergo its own digital transition, and it had to face both external and internal pressure. it had to undertake its own digital transition in the way TVET institutions operate and design and deliver skill development opportunities, but also had to, face those external pressure and changes, and therefore constantly adapt and update their offers to match with the new labor market needs or future labor market needs. And this requires coping with multiple challenges, and definitely requires, as you've already mentioned, a coordinated approach to this transformation, and requires support, change management, and robust leadership and guidance for governments, but also for TVET institutions and practitioners. Next slide, please. So I'd like here to briefly mention, conscious of time, some of the opportunities that brings digitalization and the use of technologies in the technical and vocational education and training sector and in skills system as a whole. And among them, I would mention the capacity to improve resilience of the sector. So when we are talking about the TVET professionals and practitioners, we are talking about their readiness and capacity to cope with future crises, and also maintain their own employability and remain relevant in the marketplace as well. In terms of, when we're talking about the students, yeah, it helps them, learning how to learn, relearn, unlearn, learn to learn online, how to learn online, and be ready for those new skills that are required in the labor market of today and tomorrow. So some of the technologies we can mention and that bring a lot of opportunities in the sector and in the skill system as a whole are artificial intelligence in its capacity to improve the quality of pre, in, and post-training experience. We also mentioned big data, which is used to better anticipate and work on this matching of between the supply and the demand. Or again, blockchain, which is a key technology in order to increase the recognition, portability, and security of credentials that are obtained online, for example. Next slide, please. So if we look more specifically at some of the challenges of the region, we can see that despite the high internet penetration in the region, it is still quite unequal, and I won't repeat what Susan was saying, and the quality and affordability really varies a lot across the region. The capacity to move online, to put it shortly, also really very much depends on human and technical capability limitations, and there is still a lack of continuing professional development for instructors in that matter. There's a need for a more flexible and inclusive learning system, and a need for national and regional policies and a better or clearer priority setting in that matter. And of course, in terms of the capacity building, there is a need to centralize and coordinate efforts in that respect between stakeholders. Just to briefly show you some of the key figures on the impact of the pandemic on the delivery of TVET in the region, where we see that despite, and even though huge efforts were made to maintain education while schools and TVET institutes were closed, there are still kind of mixed results, and capacity building is needed. And among the capacity development needs, there's the instructors, capacity development and continuous professional development that is needed. Next slide, please. The teachers and trainers definitely need to be endorsing those new roles that we were referring to. And from lecturers, they need to become instructional designers. They need to become media producers, content curators, online facilitators, and in a way, architects of the new learning experience. They also need to be, speaking the same language as IT teams to make sure they're able to identify and use the online solutions that are relevant for their own purposes. It can be high tech, but it can also be low to no tech, depending on the needs of their students and the local constraints. They need to be data literate and need to be able to use data and leverage data that is available in the online solutions to make sure they can leverage and make the utmost of what technology can bring in education and training. And they need to, to also support their cohort of students and learners in this new experience, new learning experience that they are going through. And in that respect, digitalization is a key enabler for capacity building, as it allows, creating online platforms, having those coordination mechanisms facilitated, create partnerships, content repositories, and have this, experience sharing that is enabled thanks to online technology. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just to let you know that the ILO is about to publish a report on digitalization of national TVET and skills systems, and to show that how technology is enabling and supporting lifelong learning. And it is a report that is willing to support policymakers and TVET institutions within their digital transformation or digital transition. And in that respect, we see how it is critical to move from a short-term kind of tactic panic response that we all had during the pandemic to a longer-term, more strategic and integrated approach to digitalization, not only in terms of skills development per se, but at all the high-level functions of a skills system, and make sure that the transition is an inclusive one that does not leave the most vulnerable behind, and that we need to be taking this human-centered approach, strategic and in a strategic and coordinated manner for the TVET and skill system digital transition as a whole. So here I'm only mentioning some of the aspects in which we are supporting our constituents, and where it could be interesting to look at these in the task force itself, providing governments and institutions with guidance on how to structure and centralize resources, supporting those mechanisms and providing the necessary tools to adequately anticipate, plan, and monitor skills development needs, whether that be at a national, regional, and or at a sectoral level, providing capacity development to help transforming the way we teach and we learn, provide this guidance to improve access to and transition in the labor market as well, thanks to career development, online platforms and guidance, for example, in an inclusive manner, and supporting the identification of the appropriate skills and attitudes and guidance for employability, decent work, and productivity in the workplace. So I'm conscious of time, so I'll leave you the floor back, Jennifer, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karine Saningo. Very wide-ranging presentation in a short space of time, pointing us to the drivers of change in the world of work, TVET and its renewed importance, the importance of having a coordinated approach, and the need for data to manage the supply and demand issues of the emerging job market, the need for a flexible response learning system, capacity development and life learning needs was highlighted, and also an important facet of the conversation, the new roles for teachers and trainers as we move forward. Thank you both ever so much, and I thank you for your willingness already to support the work of the Digital Task Force as well. Thank you. In moving on to get some regional perspectives, I have the pleasure now of introducing you to Mr. Wayne Chen, who, if he would allow me, I'd respectfully call a friend of the Caricom Secretariat. He has worked with us as a member of the Human Resource Development Commission. He is always willing to take our call and our request to speak at various events. He was one of our feature speakers for the Caricom Digital Dialogue last year. In addition to taking our many requests, he's an attorney. He chairs numerous boards, both in his country, Jamaica, and in the wider Caribbean. He currently serves as the president of the Caribbean Employers Confederation, which represents 18 national employers organizations. And so we wanted to get that voice into the conversation as to how employers see the relevance of the Digital Skills Task Force. In addition to his many professional awards and areas of service, he has also found time to write about Jamaica music as co-author of the book Reggae Roots, the story of Jamaican music. So I implore you to, even as we think about digital skills and we think about our musicians and artisans, follow him on the internet and take part in his many achievements and his wonderful insight into the link and the dynamism between employability, labor, technology. So without any further conversation from me, Mr. Chen, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for your too kind introduction, Chair. Prime Minister Mitchell, I'm not seeing too well this morning. I'd like to give my personal and warm welcome to our new Secretary General, Dr. Barnett. Distinguished colleagues, we are, I don't know if I have a PowerPoint presentation, but I suspect I can I can recite it by heart, because even before the pandemic, this has been, for years, our discussion has centered around the future of work. And the future of work, more often than not, has, next slide please, has spoken to the need for training our young people and our existing workforce, so I should say young and old, in digital skills. The reality is that globalization, to a large degree, has made borders, made our geography almost irrelevant. It has created a great threat, but at the same time, a great opportunity. The Chinese character, it is often said, for crisis is a combination of the characters of danger plus opportunity. But the beauty of it is that it has opened up the world of work to our people that is without geographical boundary. The challenge is, or the opportunity is, as we will be discussing in this conference, is how to access these jobs that are now opening up for us. Barack Obama's former advisor, Rahm Emanuel, famously said, we should never let a good crisis go to waste. And one of the things that the pandemic has done, it has focused our minds wonderfully, because it has really exposed our vulnerabilities. It has, to exogenous shocks as individual islands. I mean, no doubt Prime Minister Mitchell still has fresh in his mind a hurricane that wiped out over a year of GDP for Grenada. All of us as vulnerable island economies can recall catastrophic events that have been severely disruptive. And the region, the Caribbean region as a whole, has been the region of the world most negatively impacted by the pandemic, largely because of our dependence on tourism and travel. Some of our economies have shrunk in a year by up to 20% and over. Jamaica shrank 18% in 1 year. And it reminds us of our need to diversify our economies. Now, when we talk about digital skills, we tend to think of ICT skills. I mean, that is what it is in the common mind. I am saying, as an employer, as a representative of employers, that there are far, far more opportunities that might quickly come to mind. Opportunities have been created because we can combine innovation with technology, opportunities to create greater value in traditional sectors, whether in agriculture, whether in manufacturing, whether in our traditional areas of hospitality. But it also opens up opportunities in new sectors. And I won't get into the sort of skills that we need to train in, because there are far more competent people than myself that can address the issues of training, of upskilling the workforce, and so on. So I want to just leave a few thoughts this morning on where digital skills can create value for our countries. Next slide, please. The first one that I always come upon is in the area of government, in the area of how do we make our governments more efficient? Why do I start with government? Because when we can make the services offered by government, when we can make the operations of government more efficient, because governments already consume the greatest share, well, a greater share than any other single entity or in other single sector of our human and capital resources. I think there are huge benefits to reap in public sector reform to incorporate, well, to accelerate the digital transformation. There are opportunities to move more services online. There are opportunities to get the benefits and enhance productivity of remote work properly done. There are opportunities to have ministries and agencies which are often siloed in their operations to cooperate better. I have spoken to many Caribbean leaders who dream of joined up government because they lament how ministries tend to work as entities unto themselves, and cooperation between ministries and agencies does not happen in the way we would like. Going down the list to e-working, many of us here are now working. Once upon a time, I would enjoy my trip down to Guyana to see my friends at Caricom, go out and probably have a nice dinner at New Thriving. I haven't seen that in a couple of years, but we're still doing the work and we're still productive. So we've learned over the last year and a half or so the benefits of Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all the wonderful meeting apps. But it has also shown us that we can work remotely and still get things done. Unfortunately, it's still a relatively small percentage of us that are doing so, when the benefits could be much wider spread throughout the society. E-learning, well, we have been forced into e-learning because face-to-face school has been disrupted. It has exposed the vulnerability of our students who do not have access to the devices, who do not have sufficient access to broadband, to teachers who have not yet mastered the skills of teaching online, to households who don't have supervisors at home. But despite the challenges, we have been forced to adopt more online tutoring into our traditional mix. And going forward, we will have to have a blended approach, and it opens up new opportunities for training, for enhancement of the broadband and so on. E-commerce, I won't say much about e-commerce except to say there has been a huge flowering in entrepreneurship in that sector. Meal deliveries have now become almost the norm. Online shopping, which used to be just Amazon bringing stuff into the region, is now heavily represented internally, where local retailers, traditional retailers, have moved online, and the delivery services and the logistics have struggled to keep up. Health, we have long talked about telemedicine. We have long talked about using the technology to access advice, best doctors in the world. This we will have to accelerate, and it creates whole new opportunities. But it also creates whole new opportunities in the digitization of records, in the use of technology at the ward level, at the doctor level, at the nurse level, to access patient information, to access any information in the world. So there are opportunities there. There are opportunities in manufacturing. Next slide, please. Agriculture. I've been doing a lot of research on agriculture in the last year or so, reading about the latest developments. And it would seem to me that the biggest opportunity, there are many opportunities, I mean, from using drones to survey crops, but the biggest opportunity in agriculture is in the area of sharing crop information, so that we soften what has really been a bugbear of agriculture throughout the region, which is the cycles of shortages and plenty. Prices fluctuate wildly when there is oversupply, and then prices shoot up for consumers when there's undersupply. Using better information, real-time information online, we can smooth out a lot of the peaks and troughs of the market that has meant either consumers or farmers suffering. So there's a huge gain to be made there. And also in terms of sharing best practices. Smart buildings, I would just say that going forward, we see opportunities to build buildings that incorporate the technology. And there are opportunities, again, to retrofit buildings to incorporate the latest technological innovations. Smart energy, of course, it has to be renewable, it has to be efficient, it has to be affordable. Huge opportunities here. Smart logistics, I touched on it earlier, in terms of simple things, from simple things like food delivery to more complex issues like healthcare delivery, delivery of government services, and so on. Two of our favorites, I'll wrap up with creative industries. There's been a lot of innovation over the years in the creative industries. We have young creatives who have been collaborating and selling product online. It can mushroom if properly guided and nurtured. And last but not least, I want to touch on the whole issue of environment and climate change, and not dissimilar to our approach to agriculture. Sharing best practices, sharing information, and really being monitors to what is happening in our islands. Because we are, I don't want to end on a depressing note to say we may well have hit a tipping point beyond which we might not be turning back. But living in one of the most vulnerable parts of the world, small island states, many of us low-lying states, we are very, very vulnerable to climate change. And it behooves us to accelerate our training and learning in this area, using digital skills to mitigate the impact going forward. I hope my little laundry list, my wish list, my menu of opportunities finds favor with this gathering, because I look forward to being an active partner, speaking on behalf of the employers. Because one of the things that I should close on saying is the training has to be more responsive to the needs of the market. And seeing that the market is rapidly evolving and the pace of change accelerates, it's not a straight line. Responsiveness to the needs of the market in terms of training and delivery of training will have to be front and center of anything that we do. And to try to, yes, we can forecast, but we have to create training and create the content in a way that is quickly responsive. I'll end on a story, we had an end of a millennium 20 years ago. And I was chatting to my brothers recently because I saved the last week of December 1999 issue of Business Week. And I said, who would you think would be on the cover of that issue of Business Week as the man of the next millennium? Would it be Elon Musk? Would it be Bezos or one of them? No, it was somebody named Steve Case. And everybody was like, Steve who? And I said, yes, the guy who founded AOL. And it was like, AOL? I say, trying to predict the future makes fools of all of us. So we have to build into whatever we do systems that are quickly adaptable and very responsive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chen, for adding to the basket of insightful comments we've received this morning, and for placing big ticket items such as future of work and globalization into our midst and into the conversation, reminding us that crisis is danger and opportunity, and the biggest danger is the ease with which our economies can be devastated in this part of the world, and the many opportunities from the employer perspective with regard to many of our key sectors, from government to manufacturing, agriculture, health, creative industries, and climate change. And we thank you also for that last anecdote, which has helped to date some of us who can remember AOL, but keeps the conversation going as we think about future-proofing the region and how do we plan for that and for a future that we can't even think about. Really appreciate it. Thank you. As all of you on the call probably know, and if you don't know, this is a good time to know, there is no Caribbean or Caricom gathering where music is not a part of it. So we have invited a young student, Mr. Master Kristen Furman, who is a fourth form student at Presentation College in San Fernando, Trinidad and Tobago, to lighten up our launch ceremony for a few minutes. And he has chosen his performance via steel band on a song called Caribbean Man by Black Stallion, who is one of our regional famous composers, calypsonians, and a master of social commentary. So for 2 or 3 minutes, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation by Kristen Furman. Wonderful. I could see people clapping in the audience, and I thank you for that. I think that his performance was masterful. We can see the youthful exuberance, and we think about the work of this task force again as we think about youth, but also all practitioners, artisans, and especially our musicians as we continue to work on digital skills. The song, I invite all of you to go listen and look at the lyrics, but it is a strong reminder about looking at our past and embracing our future. And there's a strong line in the chorus which says, so we must push one common intention for a better life for the region. And I think it underpins very well the work that we want to do for the task force, which will touch every citizen in the region if we do it well. I now move on to our keynote address, which will be done by the Honorable Prime Minister of Grenada, Dr. Keith Mitchell, who is the lead head in the Quasi Cabinet with responsibility for science and technology, including ICT. Dr. Mitchell is a strong advocate for digital technology, STEM, and statistics. Under his watchful and supportive eye, the Prime Minister has spearheaded and supported the development of the Caricom connectivity agenda in 2000, the Regional Digital Development Strategy, Regional E-Government Strategy, the Regional Strategic Plan for Statistics, Cricket World Cup legislation, and many other strategic guiding partners and papers and initiatives for the Caricom region. Prime Minister Mitchell, unfortunately, could not be with us in person for the whole ceremony this morning, and so he has taken the time to record his address to us, and I invite us all to sit back or sit up and listen. And he did this overnight, and I thank him for, on behalf of all of you, for using the technology to ensure that we can still hear from him in this ceremony. Prime Minister Mitchell, thank you.
Caricom Ministers of Government, Secretary General of Caricom, Dr. Carla Barnett, permanent secretaries and other government officials, heads, representatives of regional institutions and organizations, co-chairs of the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force, Dr. Barbara Reynolds and Mr. Carlton Samuels, and members of the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force. Participants in this opening ceremony from ITU, ILO, the Caribbean Federation of Workers, our young pan man from Trinidad and Tobago, private sector stakeholders and partners, the Caricom Secretariat team, members of the media, sisters and brothers all, good morning. It is my pleasure to be part of today's launch of the Caricom Digital Skills Task Force, an important entity as Caricom continues the march towards digital transformation. The COVID-19 pandemic has commanded our attention for the past 18 months as governments seek to ensure the collective safety of all nationals. Through it all, our citizens have shown tremendous resilience, and our frontline workers must be commended for the tremendous service they have provided during this challenging period. Every crisis presents opportunities, and this pandemic has caused us to use technology more and place greater value on its critical role in the world today. digital transformation is also a concept that is becoming increasingly familiar and is impacting every industry imaginable, causing both fear and excitement. Excitement in advancing the frontiers of human endeavor, and the fear of negative repercussions on jobs and rising inequalities. The convergence of multiple technologies will radically transform the organization of economies and how people live and work. It also holds the promise to address Caricom's pressing economic and social development challenges amidst a rapidly shifting digital frontier. Grenada, like many of its Caricom sisters and brothers, has recognized the need to advance our countries and citizens through the strategic use of digital technologies. And this is evidenced in the plethora of activities being undertaken by each Caricom government. At present, the government of Grenada is fast-tracking its digital transformation agenda to create a more citizen-centric public service that is capable of delivering more online services. At the same time, we are cognizant of the need to improve the digital literacy of our citizens, allowing them to better capitalize on our improved service delivery platforms. We are rolling out a digital skills program that will enable them to do just that. Digital skills are required across the board, from agriculture to creative industries, to defense, to hospitality, to transport and tourism. All sectors are reporting the need for digital skills. Therefore, sisters and brothers, to build and foster the Caricom digital economy, we must embrace the role of technology and have a digital workforce. Young people today have a much higher level of education regarding digital skills and competencies. While they are often considered digital natives, the reality is that the majority do not possess the job-relevant digital skills. As a result, jobs requiring cloud computing, artificial intelligence, mobile app development are going unfilled. We need to change that reality. According to the Caribbean Development Bank, about 60% of the region's population is under the age of 30. Given the prevalence of youth unemployment, the growth potential of the digital economy and skills present an opportunity for tackling this and fostering entrepreneurship. Colleagues, friends, sisters, and brothers all, new ways of working will be a part of the future public service. During the COVID-19 lockdown, the public service shifted where possible to remote working and scrambled to find new ways of delivering services digitally. The public service in our respective countries now have the rising challenge of being digital rather than going digital. Digital technology would also change the traditional methods of delivering education. This is already evident as schools, teachers, parents, and students have been forced to adapt to a more online learning. There should also be greater emphasis on providing every citizen with adaptable digital skills. Sisters and brothers, changing demands from businesses, consumers, students, and communities And that will mean that entrepreneurship, vocational qualifications, technical and vocational training, and degrees need to deliver both general and specific digital capabilities that support the evolving nature of the workforce. We must also encourage a stronger focus on lifelong learning. The rapid evolution of technology has also created a continual need for lifelong learning and upskilling, and will help create an economy of adaptable workers who can take on current and future roles. It is imperative that Caricom countries agree on an agenda of change for further and higher education that addresses the magnitude of the challenge. And we must re-examine our human, technical, and financial investment in science and research. Sisters and brothers, we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, which has ushered in extraordinary technological advances, fusing boundaries of physical, digital, and biological worlds to create new paradigms in the way we live, work, and interact. To become a medium to high growth economy, Caricom as a whole needs to advance digital skills for the workforce at an unprecedented level, particularly for low-skilled workers who will otherwise bear the brunt of job vulnerability. I see a need for a new paradigm in Caricom foreign policy. Caricom has friendly working relations with many countries which are regarded as leaders in the area of digital talent and competitiveness. We must use these alliances to actively promote and garner assistance for the Caricom digital strategy and to enhance the digital skills of all our people. The time is now for us to begin work on a Caricom digital foreign policy strategy. The advocacy work being done at the level of the heads of governments and teams must be replicated across all levels of government and governance to ensure uniformity in our conversations and requests to move Caricom countries forward in the digital space. Madam Secretary General of Caricom, I expect to see many of our proposals to these countries regarded as digital leaders, reflecting the digital needs of the region. In closing, sisters and brothers all, I wish to thank members of the task force for agreeing to serve in such a critical capacity that is likely to have a significant impact on the future of our entire region. Each of you possess specific competencies, and I urge you to harness your various areas of expertise for greater good of the region and of all its people. I think some of the critical questions will be, how do we develop digital talent in Caricom? Where should our focus and resources be placed? How do digital skills building policies and programs connect to the other critical areas of the digital inclusion, broadband internet access, and digital devices such as laptops and tablet computers, the unknowns of the future technologies, and to the larger regional initiative of developing a Caricom single ICT space? How do we keep our people motivated in a world where there is perception that their work may no longer be needed? How do we keep ourselves attuned to the many challenges? How do we engage civil society and small and medium-sized enterprises in this essential conversation? These are some of the implicit issues, not necessarily in your terms of reference, but with which you must grapple to help us arrive at a comprehensive, harmonized Caricom frame of reference on digital skills as we work towards achieving key sustainable development goals by 2030. You will have to interrogate how digital transformation has changed the character of many of our priority sectors and provide technical guidance on what schemes and incentives can drive those forward. Your work is vitally important to what is envisioned as a human-centered, sustainable, and more prosperous digital future that requires a whole of Caricom approach that includes institutions, governments, industry, academia, and civil society. And as we launch this Digital Skills Task Force today, let us commit to making this exciting and necessary journey together. Let us make it possible for our citizens, or young people in particular, to gain the digital skills they need to navigate and succeed in today's digital economy. In so doing, we can build a Caricom digital future where no one is left behind. I thank you all.
Thank you, Prime Minister Mitchell, for that resounding keynote address, which pointed us to the imperatives of developing skills for Caricom, looking at youth, public service, the digital economy 4.0, digital foreign policy, and also issuing a strong charge to the task force, which no doubt they will start to listen to and address as they begin their work later this morning. Thank you, Prime Minister Mitchell. We are coming to the close of this ceremony, and I thank you all for staying with us, whether on Zoom, on Facebook, or on YouTube. And we're going to open the chat in Zoom in case anybody wanted to write a question to the task force or say anything while we close the end of the ceremony. That closing will be done by my colleague, Dr. Laura Bristol, who is the other focal point for digital skills in the Caricom Secretariat, and she's the program manager of human resource development in the Caricom Secretariat. So the Zoom chat is now open. The Facebook and YouTube comment section may have been open before, and we invite you to put any questions or comments you may have as we begin the work of the task force today in that chat or comment section. And I also hand you over now to Dr. Laura Bristol to wrap us up and to issue some words of thanks. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good morning, everyone. All protocols observed. I think we have spent the morning not just being stimulated, but certainly being refocused. If we have lost focus, I doubt that we have. But ensuring that as we think about building back better, that we are engaging in a human-centered approach for building back better. I want to start this morning in terms of my wrap-up with thanking our Prime Minister from Grenada, the Honorable Keith Mitchell, and his rallying call, not just for the task force, but for the region to think about developing digital talent in Caricom. He speaks about being digital rather than going digital. And I think that's a critical distinction that has to be made. And we do accept, Prime Minister, the mandate for us as we develop digital talent in Caricom, for us to begin to think through the ways in which we examine our investments in science and research and the role of TVET and the tertiary sector enabling and driving this. And certainly as we think about new paradigms for Caricom foreign policy to accelerate the Caricom digital strategy. As I thank the PM, I want to also thank the members of his team who enabled his ability, though not here, using the technology to be able to still deliver his remarks and share his thoughts with us. So I want to thank Ms. Philomena, his press secretary, Philomena Robertson, and the PS, of course, Mr. Finley Jeffrey. And then I want to recognize our Secretary General, Her Excellency Dr. Carla Barnett. And of course, Dr. Barnett just joined us about 4 weeks ago, and we look forward to working with her to advance and accelerate the sets of priorities that we are commonly agreeing upon within the region. And Dr. Barnett, more than in terms of all that she has shared, recognize the importance of the dual sectors of ICT and education. And of course, we are living in a different world now where silos are no longer relevant. And we have to look to engage not just integratedly, but look at, and this is a difficult word for me to pronounce all the time, interoperability. We have to be thinking about working through those kinds of forms as we think about how we work together through new forms of ecosystems to promote outcomes for our children and youth, recognizing that the work that we do is about advancing those basic rights. So therefore, let us continue to think about the ways in which every single investment we make across the different range of sectors works towards closing the skills mismatch gap. I want to recognize Dr. Susan Telsper. Thank you very much from ITU. I know it's later in the day for us, for our colleagues and our friends in Europe. So thank you for taking the time and sharing that data that you shared with us about the poor digital skills and the ways in which these digital skills actually serve as a barrier to internet adoption. And in so doing, creates opportunities, and we don't want to be creating too many of those opportunities, but creating opportunities for exclusion in work and education. So we need to certainly, through the work that we do, accelerate our digital transition through our digital skills. And therefore, we are keeping our eyes on that campaign for the youth, the 25 million young persons who have job-ready skills by 2025. So we are standing ready at the Caricom Secretariat to support the advancement of that agenda. To Ms. Karen Sangio from ILO, thank you again for sharing the research that you shared in terms of the ways in which technologies and digitalization is now driving, and we knew that coming into the conversation, but importantly, the need for new attitudes and new types of responsibilities in bridging the skills gap, and therefore re-emphasizing the urgency for digital transformation for the TVET sector. Often we are not paying enough attention there, and the need for us to respond to the existing and future labor market needs. During this entire opening and launch of the Digital Skills Task Force, I wondered at times, Jennifer, if the members who were speaking to each other in advance. So Mr. Wayne Chen, as always, a friend of the Secretariat, a friend of the region, thank you so much, because what you've done was actually round up the positions that were shared before you. And I take your equation of innovation plus technology as creating opportunities for more value in traditional sectors and the work futures, changing the character of our sectors and understanding therefore the need for a more responsive training sets of platforms and structures so that we can respond better to the needs of a dynamic market. Our students, the youth, the reason for why we do what we do. Christian Fleming, thank you so much. Presentation College San Fernando. And I take that opportunity to recognize myself as a Trinidadian. So it was a moment of pride for me. Christian, thank you so much for your interpretation of the Caribbean man on the pan. And we want to, I would encourage, like Jennifer did, to members who don't know that song from Black Stallion, go take a look, listen and a look at the words. Internalize it, because it is a champion for regional integration. I want to end by thanking our internal, and I hope I haven't forgotten anybody, but if I did, I know Jennifer would remind me, our internal teams at the Caricom Secretariat, not just in terms of ICT 4D, within TEI, I recognize ASG Cox, who is in the room here with us, and the director in TEI, Ms. Evelyn Wayne, and also our colleagues from HSD, Human and Social Development, which I'm a member of. I recognize Ms. Michelle Small-Bartley. Of course, the entire ICT4D team were ably supported by Simone Joseph Olivier. Thank you so much, Simone. Our colleagues from Communications, our colleagues from IIS, our colleagues from the OSG's office, and of course, our very important partners here, our co-chairs for the Digital Task Force, and our partners and stakeholders as we seek to enhance taking up the mandate of the PM of developing digital talent in the Caricom. Thank you, everybody, and it was a great launch. We look forward to working with you and advancing this agenda. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Loris. And on that high note, it gives me nothing else to say other than to thank all of you who joined us today, those of us who are in concert with us as we move on to this very important and critical initiative. We ask that you stay engaged and continue to communicate with the Caricom Secretariat and the task force as we move forward. The task force is committed and mandated to work for only 1 year. So please get your comments, suggestions, research, and everything into us as quickly as possible. We can be reached via the Caricom website. Our email address is there, and we will certainly publish the recording from this launch and all the presentations and the biographies of the speakers on that website by the end of next week. I thank you all for your attention this morning, and we look forward to working with you and collaborating on digital skills for Caricom. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Laura, again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Welcome. Thank you, too.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.